When we picture pre-Islamic Arabia, we usually think of rampant paganism, right? But what if I told you that for centuries, the original faith of the Arabs was actually a pure, straightforward monotheism? Yeah. Today, we're diving into a fascinating religious detective story to figure out how it all got turned upside down. So here's the big mystery we're tackling. How did a land that traced its entire spiritual heritage back to the great monotheist, Abraham, somehow end up with a staggering 360 idols crammed around its holiest site, the Kaaba? It's a huge religious shift, and we're going to trace exactly how it happened. All right, so to solve this, we have to go back, way back. Before all the idols and the pantheon of gods, Arabia had an original faith, a monotheistic legacy that came directly from their most revered ancestor. The original religion of the Arabs was the faith of Abraham, or Ibrahim as they knew him. And it was simple, it was clear, the worship of one God. And for thousands of years, this wasn't just some side note in their history, it was the absolute foundation of who they were. In fact, if you look closely, so many of the core rituals in that region were actually started by Abraham himself. He's the one who set up Mecca as a sacred sanctuary, a place where no violence was allowed. He established the rites of the pilgrimage, the Hajj. He even designated 4 sacred months where all the tribal warfare had to stop, which, brought peace and was great for the economy. And the Kaaba? It was meant to be a focal point for reverence, a symbol of God's house, not something to be worshipped itself. All of these were originally pure monotheistic practices. So if that foundation was so solid, where did the first crack appear? Well, the historical sources all point to one specific moment, and one very influential person, who kicked off a change that would completely reshape Arabian religion for the next 500 years. The man's name was Amr ibn Luhai. And listen, this guy wasn't just anybody. He was the chief of the Khuza'a tribe, the group that controlled Mecca at the time. He was known for being incredibly generous, powerful, and everyone respected him. Basically, he was the biggest influencer of his day. When he did something, people paid attention and they followed. So this story goes like this. Amr takes a trip up north to Syria, which he sees as this center of civilization and power. And while he's there, he sees the Amalekites, and they seem to have it all figured out. They have amazing buildings, military strength, and they have idols. So he asks them, hey, what are these things? And they tell him, oh, these are our secret sauce. We pray to them for victory, for rain, and they deliver. Amr is totally blown away. He asks for an idol to take back with him, and they give him one named Hubal. He carries it all the way back to Mecca and places it right in front of the Kaaba, the very heart of Arabian monotheism. And get this wasn't just some decoration that people forgot about. Hubal became the main god for Mecca's ruling tribe, the Quraysh. Its influence was so deep that hundreds of years later, at the famous Battle of Uhud, the war cry from the leader of the Quraysh wasn't for his tribe or for some king. It was glory to Hubal. That's how deeply this one idol got woven into the fabric of their culture. But hold on, bringing a statue to a city is one thing. How does that one act spiral into a situation with 360 idols? How did an entire people just turn their back on their ancestors' faith? Well, it wasn't just one thing. It was more like a perfect storm of 3 key factors. I mean, that really is the million-dollar question, isn't it? How can one person, no matter how influential they are, just overturn 2,000 years of religious tradition? It seems almost impossible. But when you start to look at what was going on socially and culturally at the time, the answer becomes pretty clear and kind of scary. So 3 things made this possible. First, a major cultural inferiority complex. Amr saw the powerful Amalekites and basically thought, well, their gods must be better than our one god. Second, Amr's own star power. He was a beloved leader, so people just trusted him and went along with it. And third, and this is probably the most important one, was just widespread ignorance. Think about it. After 2,000 years with no new prophets, no new books, the pure original message of Abraham had just gotten watered down and mostly forgotten. And you can literally see this change in their rituals. Just look at how they twisted the talbiyah, the main chants of the Hajj pilgrimage. The original was a crystal-clear declaration of monotheism. Here I am, O Allah, you have no partner. Simple. But the idol worshippers added a little something at the end. They'd say, you have no partner except a partner that belongs to you. It was like this little theological loophole, a way to justify their new idols while still sorta giving a nod to the one big God. But this takeover wasn't a total sweep. Even as idolatry was spreading like wildfire across the land, there was a small but really important resistance. In what seemed like the darkest of times, there were still people who remembered the old ways, and went searching for that original truth. A little glimmer of monotheism just refused to go out. Just let this number sink in. By the time the Prophet Muhammad was born in the 6th century, the Kaaba was surrounded by 360 different idols. Idolatry was the default setting. It was just the normal, everyday religion. It was the air people breathed.
And yet, standing against all of that, you had a group of people known as the Hunafa. The word Hanif basically means someone who turns away. In this case, turning away from the corruption of idol worship and turning back towards the pure, original faith of Abraham. They were the dissenters, the spiritual seekers of their time.
Now, these individuals were rare, for sure, but they were out there. They looked at the society around them, all the statues made of stone and wood, the confusing rituals, and they just knew in their hearts that something had gone terribly wrong. They understood that this couldn't possibly be the religion of their great ancestor Abraham, and so they spent their lives trying to find that lost truth. To really understand the courage of these Hunafa, we can't just talk about them as a group. We need to look at a specific life. And there is no better example than the story of a man named Zayd ibn Amr. Can you just imagine the conviction, the sheer loneliness of being able to stand up in the middle of Mecca in front of your own people and say this? Zayd wasn't just some quiet guy who disagreed in private. He was a public critic. He looked at his entire tribe, his whole city, and saw that they had lost their way, and he wasn't afraid to tell them. And his actions totally backed up his words. He openly condemned idol worship. He refused to eat any meat that had been sacrificed to idols, which was a huge social statement back then. He actively fought against the horrible practice of burying infant girls alive. He would actually take in the babies others were trying to get rid of and raise them as his own. So tragically, he died just 5 years before the Prophet Muhammad began his mission. But his legacy was so powerful that the Prophet later said that on the Day of Judgment, Zayd would be resurrected as an entire nation, an ummah, all by himself. And this really brings us to our final thought. The story of Zayd and the Hunafa forces us to ask a question that's absolutely timeless. When everyone around you is just going with the flow, when the entire culture is built on something you know is wrong, what does it take to break away? What does it take for a person, then or now, to reject conformity and set out on that lonely search for truth?